Western Michigan University, and I am presenting on You and Illness, Win with a Healthy Immune System. So I've got my Bronco gear on. I don't know if you can see it. I have my Bronco gear on because this is about fighting. This is about, trying to fend off all those things that are out there these days. And I think it's so appropriate that Human Resources and through the Health and Wellness Expo that we're doing it virtually, and that we've got this little section here on immunity and trying to look at different ways that you can support your immune system. And since I'm a dietitian, we are going to focus on food and how food is integral to supporting your immune system. So I think all of us have heard, hopefully over and over and over again this year, that it's really, really important to watch out for COVID, right? So coronavirus right now is in the news, but looking at everything else that's out there, we want to protect ourselves from everything, not just coronavirus. And so at this time of year, I think a lot of us have, every year at this time, we're told to get our flu shot, wash your hands, cover your sneezes, all that kind of stuff. Super, super important still. And then with the coronavirus aspect, hopefully we're all wearing masks and we're physically distancing. So those two things hasn't really been a public health message in the past in terms of, here in the United States. But super, super important. All these things on the screen are important to do because yes, we can do things to support our immune system, but nothing takes the place of washing your hands, or nothing right now takes the place of wearing a mask. So it's all important, right? And so when I was researching this over the summer months, I found this really nice abstract from this article here. And it really does highlight a lot of the things that I'm going to cover today. And a couple of the things is that your immune system has to be able to distinguish self from non-self, right? Because we don't want to turn against our bodies. We want to fight off things that are non-self. And it's interesting because there are conditions and diseases that where our immune system attacks itself, right? They're called autoimmune diseases. But we're looking at supporting the immune system in terms of nutrition and supporting the immune system to help do what it's supposed to do. So huge role, huge thing that it has to do, distinguish between self and non-self, right? And then those non-self molecules, the immune system has to determine harmful non-self molecules from not harmful food, right? So that is a non-self molecule. But we don't want our body to reject food. And so again, our immune system is really complicated and it has to distinguish between non-self harmful and non-self helpful. Allergens, food. Super, super, I think it's super interesting. Okay, then we're also looking at how macronutrients and micronutrients. So now we're kind of boiling down to nutrition. So in my world of nutrition, macronutrients, right, are carb, protein, fat. Micronutrients, vitamins, minerals. We do things with carb, protein, and fat, and we can do things with vitamins and minerals to help support our immune system. We also really want to focus in on our gut because it's interesting, most of our immune system is within our gut, right? So our stomach and our intestines. So we're going to be talking quite a bit about how to make sure that our gut remains healthy so that our immune system remains healthy. And then we're also looking at the fact that supporting your immune system can happen in the hospital, in a clinical setting, in terms of there are different supplements and medications that can help support your immune system. And of course, I'm interested in knowing about that and making sure that those things are out there, right? But I'm here to talk about how healthy populations, how you and I, not in a hospital setting, can improve our intake of food to help strengthen and support our immune system. The key here, though, with this big, big arrow is that research is ongoing. So this whole area of research is fairly new. And so you're not going to come out of this talk going, oh my gosh, now I know the answer to everything. But I've picked out what is new and relevant and highly researched these days, and I'm going to try to share that with you, okay? But stay tuned, right? And especially since this coronavirus, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more about the immune system and what we can do to support it. So as you can tell from this slide here, oh my gosh, it's complicated. So it's not a simple thing to talk about the immune system, but I'm going to break it down in a couple of little simple portions right off the bat, okay? So we've got our innate immune system, our adaptive or acquired immune system, and then we've got other things that can trigger immune responses. So let's look first at our innate immune system. And that includes barriers and traps and things that destroy and attack. So things like our skin, that is a huge line of defense, right? So that's considered a barrier. Our mucus in our mouth and our mucus all around our body traps bad pathogens. So that's an important part of our immune system. Stomach acid destroys things that shouldn't be in our gut, right? Enzymes creates antibacterial compounds. And then our immune cells actually do the attacking. So that's what we call our innate immune system versus our adaptive or acquired immune system. So this is when our body learns to recognize a pathogen, right? So a pathogen is a bad thing. So our body learns this ability to recognize a pathogen, and then it creates antibodies that kind of lead to destroying the pathogen. And then when that pathogen comes back into our bodies, we can respond a lot quicker because we've done it before. So we've acquired the ability, our immune system has acquired the ability to recognize and attack pathogens when they come into our bodies at different times. So that's acquired immunity. Both those systems, when working healthy, gives us the best chance of really trying to fight things that shouldn't be inside of us, right? Because we have to remember that pathogens or microbes or bugs are all over our body. They're in us and they're on us. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So then other things that can trigger an immune response are allergies. We talked about that, right? So when I eat any food, I don't have an allergic reaction, but some people have allergic reactions. My body can discern between non-self, and to me, it knows it's a harmless non-self compound. But to somebody else, their immune system has gone a little bit off, and to that person, that strawberry is a harmful non-self substance, right? Also, other things like inflammation. Inflammation is huge in the immune response. So if we think about a good example of inflammation, that's like when you sprain your ankle, right? And it puffs up and it gets swollen. That is part of an acute immune response. And that kind of inflammation is really helpful. It's beneficial inflammation, right? It keeps you off your leg, you put it up so that you stay off of it. So our body is saying, hey, you just sprained your ankle, get off of it. And it makes it painful and swollen and warm and all of those things that tells us to get off that ankle and let it heal. But when we have chronic inflammation, that's not a good thing. And chronic inflammation can come from stress. It can come from poor food choices. Lots of different things can lead to chronic inflammation, and that's not the good kind. And that's where diet can come in, is looking at this chronic inflammation. So if you think about it, I mentioned already autoimmune disorders, immunodeficient disorders. So those are disorders where your immune system isn't acting normally. And you run into trouble with type 1 diabetes or AIDS, leukemia, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, those are all immune system dysfunctioning in a sense. So let's start talking about factors that depress our immune system. I've got diet at the bottom, okay? So we're gonna get to that for sure, but all these other things are super, super important. The interesting or sad news is that aging, in and of itself, aging decreases our immune system. It's got a word that describes it, immunosenescence. So yeah, just as we sit here and age, which we're doing right now, it is one of the things that contribute to a depressed immune system. Environmental toxins. I'm much more, day after day thinking about environmental toxins and how, if we keep polluting the earth and people that live in urban centers and areas around big manufacturing plants, their immune systems really do suffer from those environmental toxins. Chronic illness can depress your immune system. Mental stress, like I mentioned, can depress your immune system. Lack of sleep and rest is huge in trying to maintain a good immune system. Excess fat, so adipose tissue. Excess adipose tissue can also be pretty stressful. It creates inflammation, and it also involves the immune system in a non-beneficial way. And then, of course, poor diet, which we're going to talk about. So then the opposite of each of those things that can support your immune system, don't smoke, because smoking actually is an environmental toxin in a sense. So, that is up to you or to those people that you're hanging around with. Avoiding environmental toxins is a little bit harder, right? Because we don't necessarily have a ton of control over that. People in urban centers can't just get up and leave and go move somewhere else. But that's another reason to really look at how pollution really affects our health, our immediate health. Managing chronic illnesses. So if you have diabetes, keeping those blood glucoses under really good control is a good way to help support your immune system. Physical activity has been shown to support your immune system. Managing stress, sleep, maintaining a healthy weight. Again, that's that excess adipose tissue. And then a healthy diet. Okay, so let's get into a healthy diet. So looking at specific nutrients that can help to support your immune system, there are several that have been studied. The thing that I want to say before we really get going here is that after we're done talking about this, I don't want people to rush out and just go grab some vitamin A or whatever we're going to talk about next, right? So it's really the studies that have been done have looked at people that are deficient in these nutrients that I'm going to talk about now. And here in the United States, we don't have a huge trouble with vitamin A deficiency. I'll go through each slide and kind of explain if we do here in the US have issues or not. But typically most people in the US are getting plenty of vitamin A. It's not one of the things that we see a deficiency in people that we're studying. But vitamin A is super important, right? So it helps regulate the immune system, and it really does a good job of protecting our GI tract. And remember, our GI tract is all the way from your mouth to your esophagus, to your stomach, to your intestines, and out the other end, right? And so really keeping a good supply of foods that have vitamin A is the key. So like I mentioned, don't everybody start running out and get some vitamin A, because really studies, when people aren't deficient in vitamin A, excess vitamin A doesn't seem to help. We don't have research on that, okay? But you want to maintain a good intake of vitamin A, and it's pretty easy to do. So sticking with those orange and red and dark yellow fruits and vegetables, sweet potatoes, carrots, the dark red bell peppers, they're reddish orange, right? Apricots, orange. Egg yolks, yellow orange. So you can kind of tell that foods that contain vitamin A are on that yellow to red spectrum. And then of course there's fortified foods that don't have anything to do with color, but fortified foods like milk and cereals that can also help with vitamin A intake. All right, going through the alphabet here, vitamin C, super important, but again, we don't need mega doses. And at the end of the slide, I'll talk about vitamin C in particular in terms of some of the myths that are out there with it. Vitamin C is really important in stimulating the formation of antibodies. Remember, antibodies are those things that attack the antigens or the pathogens. So citrus fruit, peppers, papaya, strawberries, tomatoes, tomato juice, and then some fortified foods out there with vitamin C. So again, pretty easy to get these vitamin A and vitamin C nutrients with just a good healthy diet. And mainly, as you've noticed, lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of fruits and vegetables. Vitamin D, so we're going to change a little bit here. So vitamin D doesn't have a ton to do with fruits and vegetables, but what it has to do with is helping to control infections, reducing inflammation. And I also, when I was researching this, I also read some studies on vitamin D and influenza in particular, looking at, they're doing some studies on whether what the role that vitamin D has in fighting off influenza, the flu. So traditionally, people got vitamin D through sunshine. They weren't eating a lot of fortified foods or supplements, right, in the olden days. So they got it from sunshine. But these days, not a lot of us are in the sunshine, right? We're nervous about skin cancer. We wear a lot of sunscreen. We're not out between 10 and 2, which are good things to be doing, right? But so, yeah, we can't really rely a ton on sunshine, especially people here in Michigan. So over, I think it's the 42nd latitude, north of the 42nd latitude, that's where we find, a higher incidence of vitamin D deficiency because it's just not sunny all the time around here. So yes, sunshine can be a source, but I really think that most of us need to look at fortified foods or possibly a supplement. So fortified foods typically land up in the dairy and dairy alternative food group. So things like milk and yogurt, and then the alternative, so soy milk and cashew milk and almond milk, they don't naturally contain vitamin D. They have to be fortified with it. Same thing with cow's milk. Cow's milk doesn't naturally contain vitamin D, but it's been fortified with it. So here in the United States, cow's milk is one of the best sources of vitamin D, even though it's not in there naturally, right? So some fortified foods, you got to make sure that you're looking at what you're getting there. And then this is the one where I say, that a supplement probably maybe in order for quite a few of us, but don't just run out there and grab any old vitamin D off the shelf, right? You need to go to your physician, you need to have a blood draw, and you need to find out, number one, are you deficient or insufficient, right? And number two, if you are, what level are you at? Are you really deficient? Are you just mildly insufficient? And that determines how much vitamin D you can go on. So depending on your level of insufficiency, deficiency, people can go on anywhere from 1,000 international units of vitamin D a day to 10,000 international units a week. Right? So huge difference. Don't be guessing either. Don't think that you can guess at how much vitamin D that you need. Really go talk to your doctor about that and see if you really need to get on a supplement. And then if you do get on a supplement, how much do you need? Then the other thing that's really important about vitamin D is don't just stay on that supplement forever, right? Go get another follow-up vitamin D level. Because if someone's on a 10,000 international units a week, you do not stay on that forever. You need to go back, see if that did what it was supposed to do, and then adjust your vitamin D intake from there. I see that all the time, that people don't follow up by getting another blood draw, and then they stay on these high doses of vitamin D, which you don't want to do. Okay. Again, going through the alphabet here, vitamin E, super important in the immune system. It is a powerful antioxidant. And it's a little bit difficult to find in foods, but nuts and seeds, so foods that contain plant sources of oils, is a good place to find it. So sunflower seeds, almonds, vegetable oils, hazelnuts, peanut butter, those naturally have vitamin E in it, and then some fortified cereals out there, and other fortified products. So I would say that out of these guys here, if we just make some wise choices with vitamin A foods and vitamin C foods, probably, it's pretty easy to get those in. Vitamin D, again, that's going to be a kind of a tricky one. And you probably need to have a blood draw and talk to your doctor. But vitamin E, you can do it, but I think we have to pay a little bit more attention. Right? What kind of nuts and seeds are we getting in? What kind of oils are we using? And making sure that those are a regular part of our diet. Okay, so kind of through the alphabet. So those were vitamins that I focused on. Now we're going to switch over and look at a couple of minerals. So the first mineral we're going to look at is zinc. Zinc is huge in wound healing. And remember, I mentioned that your skin is a huge part of your immune system. So any kind of wound healing, whether you can see it or whether it's inside, zinc is going to be really, really important. And zinc is pretty easy to come by too, especially if you choose to eat animal products. Okay, so lean meat, poultry, seafood, milk, those have zinc in them. And then if you're not a big animal eater, then you really want to make sure you're getting a wide variety of whole grains. So not the refined grains, but the whole grains. Beans, peas, legumes, so things like black beans, garbanzo beans, kidney beans, those are all really good sources of zinc. And then nuts and seeds. So you get kind of a double whammy with zinc and vitamin E with your nuts and seeds. All right, so A through Z, right? So there's a lot of different things you can do in terms of just getting a wide variety of foods. And now protein. So protein is a macronutrient. All of these other ones we talked about are micronutrients. They're vitamins and minerals. Protein is a macronutrient, and protein is really important in healing and recovery. But I don't want to have anybody leave this presentation thinking, oh my gosh, I need tons more protein, because usually here in the US, we get enough protein, okay? Maybe we need to work on variety. So if all you eat is chicken, because 10 years ago you heard that red meat wasn't good for you, and now all you're eating is chicken, that's probably better than eating all red meat, but you still want a variety of different protein sources. So seafood is a fantastic thing that you might want to check into, right? Don't forget about the plant sources of protein. So those same beans, peas, and legumes that were full of zinc are also excellent, excellent sources of protein. Soy products, nuts and seeds, again with zinc and with vitamin E. So a wide variety of protein sources ensures that you're getting a good amount and the varying amino acids that have to do with protein intake. Research is also looking at individuals that are deficient in these particular nutrients, but I think if we get a wide variety of foods, we probably are hitting most of these, and the research isn't as well documented as the nutrients that I just spoke about, so I'm not going to take time and go through each one of them. They're all super important in terms of a lot of different health issues, and of course in terms of your immune system, so they're really important. But we're going to keep moving on here, okay? So a wide variety of foods from a wide variety of different food groups is going to give you the basics that you need. So I think I've kind of, emphasized the fact that I like the food first aspect, okay? So the only time I talked about a supplement was when I talked about vitamin D. Now that doesn't mean that someone might need another supplement, maybe a single supplement of something else, or possibly a multivitamin mineral supplement. So if you think your diet isn't as good as it should be, talk to your doctor, talk to your dietitian, right? But I also feel comfortable with telling those individuals who don't think their diet's up to snuff to take a multivitamin mineral supplement, right? So you want to take one though that only has about 100% of the daily value in it. So when you get that multivitamin bottle, you turn it around and you check to see that any of the vitamins or minerals is right around 100%. I was just working with a client the other day, and their multivitamin said that B12 was 40,000 times the daily value. So that is absolutely unnecessary. 100% of the daily value would be a good, prudent, fine multivitamin mineral supplement for someone. Okay, but again, somebody might need a separate calcium, or a separate D, or a separate something other. But you don't know that. I don't know that until I would do a diet analysis or until your doctor would draw some blood. So just keep that in mind. Try to do it with food. And then if you have questions, ask ask people, ask your dietitian, ask your doctor. Okay, so there's kind of the wrap up there in terms of what we talked about. Wide variety of foods, plant-based, whatever you want to call it. And then the thing that we're going to focus on right now is looking at our microbiome and making sure that that is healthy. So I mentioned at the very beginning that our gut is a huge part of our immune system. We're estimating that there's about 70, and I've read 70 to 80% of our immune cells are found in our GALT, our gut-associated lymphoid tissue. So within our stomach and our intestines, our gut, that's where we find most of our immune cells. So we've got to keep that gut healthy. So just a couple of definitions. Microbiome means the community of bugs, the community of organisms in that particular area, right? So our whole microbiome includes the bugs that are on us and the bugs that are in us. Microbiota, when you hear that term, that means the individual bugs. The interesting, weird thing about microbiota is that there's billions of them. So you won't come out of today's presentation knowing that you're supposed to eat these 3 microbiota. No, not at all. There's billions of them. So again, this is an emerging area of research. And I can give you some general things, and I bet most of us can work on getting our microbiome healthier. But I can't give you any for sure. It's like, oh yeah, this particular microbiota is going to do it for you. Not at all. All right. So gut is super, super, super important. So what we want to make sure that we're doing is that we are keeping the good bugs in us healthy and consuming other good bugs. So pro means good, right? Biotic means living. So the good living things that we want to be eating. And then we can also keep our good stuff we already have in us healthy. So probiotics are live microorganisms. They are living things. And they definitely have been shown to confer health benefits in terms of keeping our immune system healthy. And then also lots of interesting emerging research on our microbiome and our cognitive health, our microbiome and cancer risk reduction, heart disease risk reduction. So a really, really interesting area of study these days. And when we look at food choices, there's not a ton of things that has probiotics in it. We look at fermented foods and cultured foods. And I need to change this slide because I should have cultured foods, which includes yogurt and kefir, and then fermented foods that includes the sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh. Okay, so just a little technical thing there. But cultured foods like yogurt and kefir, they have bugs in it. The process of these foods being cultured creates these environments that the probiotics, the good stuff, likes to live. Fermenting foods, again, also that process introduces and allows these good bugs to thrive. But a lot of people look at me and like, man, I'm not eating those foods, right? We'll talk about a couple things after we're done here, all right? But the other interesting thing is I can't say, oh, you need exactly 2 cups of this a day and 1 cup of that. We don't know that. So my advice is to increase your intake of food that contains probiotics and just do it several times a week. Again, I cannot tell you the frequency and the dose. I can't tell you the dose yet. We don't know that. But to include more of these foods would be a really good idea. So when you're looking at foods that are supposed to contain probiotics, you want to make sure that those foods have been stored properly, because remember, these things are alive. And so they need refrigeration. That's really not a problem too much these days here in the US. But if you were living in another country, a third world country in particular, or, you know, 80 years ago when our supply chain wasn't working as well as it does these days, refrigeration could be a problem. So things you want to look for when you're checking out yogurt or sauerkraut or whatever you're checking on is that you want to make sure it has live and active cultures in it. You want to look for those words, or the word lacto fermented or naturally fermented, raw, unpasteurized. So those are all words that mean that this food has the probiotics in it that you need. So you know, if you have any kind of question about, you know, was this stored properly or whatever, I can't tell you that. You know, you would just want to talk to the grocery store that you go to buy these particular things. When I like at farmers market, when I see people selling yogurt, I want to make sure that I see a cooler. I want to make sure that this whatever they're selling has kept these bugs alive. So just think about those couple things as you are trying to increase your intake of these probiotics. I get the question a lot of times like, well, what can I do when I don't like yogurt? I hate it. I'm allergic to dairy. I will never eat sauerkraut, you know, those kind of questions. So again, my first piece of advice is food first. But then there are supplements out there, probiotic supplements. That work, that, you know, there's good information out there on them. You kind of want to stick with a good quality name brand. So I'm not sure I would be buying a probiotic supplement from, you know, Joe Schmo down the street, right? So a good quality name brand probiotic is something you'd want to look for. And then you want to look for the different strains, the different bugs in that probiotic. So if you're buying a probiotic and it just has one type of bug in there, you know, remember there's billions out there. So you want to get a supplement, or I can also go back here, you guys, and say that if you keep buying the same yogurt over and over and over, you're getting the same bugs over and over and over. So you want to buy Dannon yogurt, and then you want to buy Chobani, and then you want to buy a different brand. Because if you look at the type of probiotics in there, they're going to differ between brands, even between different types within a brand. That's the key, is variety, because I can't tell you that Bifidobacterium is the one that's the best for you. We don't know that kind of stuff yet. So whether it's food or a supplement, variety. So does that mean that you're going to buy one supplement and another because there's different, possibly, right? Again, we don't know which combination or which ones are the best or in what dose. So yeah, I tell people if they aren't going to eat food and a wide variety of different foods that contain probiotics, then they check out a supplement, and then they probably want to rotate their supplement. Maybe buy a couple, you know, and take one on Monday and the other one Wednesday and the other on Friday, that kind of thing. Okay. Remember that heat destroys these things. So some supplements are actually in the refrigerated section. Some of them are freeze dried. So the freeze drying process is a viable way to preserve the live bugs. Okay, so you know, I just got done saying they all need to be refrigerated, but I'm backtracking here when I talk about supplements, and they've been freeze dried. So that's a perfectly good way to process these things. However, they still can't sit in your car in a 90-degree summer day. Okay, so you want to make sure that they're still all kept in a cool environment. And then let's say you're on an antibiotic, right? So anti destroys bugs. So if you're on an antibiotic, you don't want to take your probiotic at the same time. You want to at least take it, I've read, between a couple hours before or a couple hours after you've taken your antibiotic. Okay, so once again, I haven't said, oh, you better take supplement A, it's the best one. We don't know that. But try to get a name brand, try to get a variety from your supplement, and make sure you're storing it properly. One other food, speaking of refrigeration, that I didn't have on here that I need to put is kombucha. So there are, and that reminds me because those are in the refrigerated section, right? So kombucha is a fermented food, bunch of different kinds and varieties out there with it. So it's another perfectly good food, that drink, beverage that contains probiotics. But you can't leave the kombucha in your car either, right? So that it gets hot. Okay, so we talked about the good stuff in terms of what contains good probiotics. Now let's look at the flip side. What foods do you eat that create dysbiosis, that create pro-inflammation? And it's the same old things that I talk about when I talk about heart disease and diabetes and cancers and Alzheimer's. Processed foods, added sugars, and saturated and trans fats. Okay, so, we pretty much know all this. So anything that humans have touched a lot, processed, not good for us. Added sugars, and in particular here in the US, our added sugars comes these days from beverages. There's a quadrillion different types of beverages out there that have added sugar. And then saturated and trans fat. So saturated fat comes from animal products and comes from animals in the greatest amount that have 4 legs. So beef and pork have the most saturated fat. Chickens with 2 legs have less saturated fat. Fish, 0 legs, less saturated fat. And then beans, peas, and legumes, good sources of protein, no saturated fat. So in a sense, the less legs, the better when it comes to saturated fat intake. Trans fats, there are a couple foods where trans fats occur naturally, but mainly we get our trans fats from processed foods. So all of those things, so let's say I just eat some yogurt and then I have a bunch of sugar and processed food on top of it, that's putting my gut backwards. So the same things I talk about a ton for most of us to really work on decreasing are also really, really good for your gut, therefore your immune system. And then I put antibiotics down at the bottom of the page because, of course, antibiotics kill the good stuff, but of course, sometimes you need an antibiotic. And this is an issue with, you've probably heard, that we're really trying to reduce our use of antibiotics because it can destroy the good stuff too. But when you need one, right? But you want to make sure that you're describing your illness to your doctor so they can discern whether they think it's viral or bacterial. And antibiotics only work on bacterial things. Okay. So now let's look at, so now you've got all of these bugs, these living things inside of you that need to stay healthy. They need to eat. Or the other flip of this is, let's say you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to eat yogurt or kefir or kombucha and I don't want to take a supplement. Well, you know what? You already do have healthy bugs in you. So you can feed the already good healthy bugs in you by eating foods that are full of what we call prebiotics. Okay. So prebiotics fuel or feed the probiotics. So really easy thing to remember, what type of foods are prebiotics? They come from plants. Plants have to be vegetarian, but we really need to, just like I talked about earlier, have a plant-based, plant-forward, plant-dominant diet. So when I talk about prebiotics and I talk about plants, I send everybody to the pharmacy. Okay, the pharmacy. 2 different compounds in plants that are particular or important to talk about when we talk about prebiotics: fiber and polyphenols. So fiber, all plant food contains fiber, and there's different kinds of fiber. The one that is a prebiotic is fermentable. So the row across the bottom of the screen, those are fermentable fibers. Those are prebiotics. But don't disregard the other kinds of fiber that are listed on the screen here. And really, if you think about it, all plants can be prebiotics, and all plants have the potential to feed the good stuff. The ones that we've highlighted on the bottom are just ones that we know do a really good job of feeding those probiotics. So let me just review this slide here. So viscous fiber, that's the kind of fiber that helps with blood glucose and cholesterol. It forms kind of a gel in your body. Insoluble fiber is the fiber that gets food in and out of you in a timely fashion through your GI tract. And then fermentable fibers are the ones that are super good at feeding those probiotics. Those are the prebiotics. And if you look at that bean, pea, and legume column, that's a magical, no foods are magical, but that's a really powerful food group there because it contains the viscous, the insoluble, and the fermentable. Plants, 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 wide variety, fermentable, beans, peas, and legumes. Okay, so now let's look at polyphenols. Polyphenols are also prebiotic-like, they feed the good stuff. They're also antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. So really good for our overall health. They've been linked with cardiac disease, nerve diseases, different cancers. And they come from a wide variety of plants, like we talked about. In particular, a couple of the ones that are real high in polyphenols are grapes and apples and cherries and berries, all sorts of different berries. Beans, peas, and legumes. I think the good news for a lot of people is that coffee and tea are actually rich sources of polyphenols. So that's a good thing, unless you're putting in a lot of sugar and cream and flavors and all that kind of stuff. But if you think about it, coffee and tea come from plants. So again, plant-based intake. And then I was going to keep dark chocolate off the list here, but I thought, oh, well, I'll stick it on there, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, dark chocolate's so good for you, and then they eat dark chocolate for dinner. That's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm just saying that cocoa from a bean, from a tree, from a plant has polyphenols in it. But once we start adding sugar and, that's when we get into trouble. But yeah, the actual dark cocoa powder or dark cocoa bean, that's got polyphenols in it. Same thing now, if you look at grapes, same thing with wine. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk just a little bit about, what the science says for some of the misunderstood nutrients that are out there where people are pushing these things in terms of, this is going to be the end all be all, it's going to cure things and, that kind of stuff. So let's look at vitamin C. That's a really, really common thing for people to consume a lot of and to consume because they want to prevent colds. So the research shows that vitamin C does not prevent colds or reduce the number of them. What it does is it can reduce the length and the severity if you catch a cold. The thing that I want to pinpoint is that, so the RDA for vitamin C, 75 milligrams for women, 90 for men, that's what we should be getting in daily. We also have set an upper limit, not me, officials have set an upper limit for vitamin C, and that's at 2,000 milligrams. And over 2,000 milligrams, you can start running into some toxicity issues, okay? So, and it doesn't mean if one day you take 2,000 milligrams, something's gonna happen, but after months and years of taking large doses of vitamin C, you can really run into some trouble. So I just wanna point that out. So as I talk about vitamin C, I wanna make sure you know that, gosh, 75 to 90 milligrams is probably what you need, but some of these cure-all packets that are out there can have a lot in it, and you don't want to be doing that daily. So I say, okay, go for it. If you want to take some vitamin C when you feel the signs of a cold coming on, great. That may help reduce the severity and the length, but it's not going to cure or prevent. Same thing with zinc. But a couple things about zinc that I want to say in supplemental form is that you want to really be careful of the intranasal. okay? Because that really can have some long-term irreversible effect on your sense of smell. So if you want to take it orally, once again, it doesn't prevent or reduce the number of colds that you're getting, but it might help with decreasing the severity and the length. Zinc can also interfere, just like high doses of vitamin C, zinc can also interfere with certain medications. So you want to check with your doctor. And then again, I've got the RDA, 8 to 11 milligrams, and then what the upper limit is. And again, that's that number that if you're taking 40 milligrams or more daily, weekly, monthly, you can run into some troubles. And then I'm gonna kind of sort of end here with chicken soup. So the short answer to does chicken soup cure the common cold? The answer is no. But if you think of what chicken soup is made up of, it's got a lot of the stuff that we just talked about. Now, we didn't talk necessarily about fluid or electrolytes in any detail, but we did talk about zinc and protein, right? And you can get that from the chicken, vitamin A from the carrots, vitamin C from some celery and onions, antioxidants from any onions or herbs, or, so chicken soup doesn't do anything magical. It's just a good, warm, nice thing, that can help you feel a little bit better. Echinacea. So I'm ending with chicken soup and echinacea. So echinacea, a lot of people are convinced that it, cures the common cold and all that kind of stuff. The problem with echinacea and the studies on it is that there's so many different forms, right? So you can get echinacea from the petals of the plant, from the seeds, from the stem, from the whatever. It can be in a powder, it can be in a tincture, it can be in a dilute solution. So to study it is really, really hard. There's a little bit of limited evidence that it might be kind of like vitamin C and zinc. It might have something, prevent you from getting a cold. And then you really want to be careful with echinacea in kids. So there are some good studies out there showing that that echinacea in kids can really possibly bring up some rashes, some kind of severe rashes. So be careful with that. Okay. So I would love to invite you to send me any questions that you might have on your diet. Gretchen.Kauth@wmich.edu. I'm over at Syndicuse. I work with Western Wellness. Take a one-on-one appointment with me over at Syndicuse. So yeah, you've got resources here on campus, and so I'm inviting you to stop by and ask some questions if you have any. So stay safe, everybody. Wash your hands, wear those masks, socially distance, feed your microbiome, and eat a wide variety of plant-based foods. All right.
I have a question, quick, please.
Hi.
Hi, I tuned in later, so I didn't want to interrupt with my face and all that. You mentioned about, so I was in the middle. Would you please put your contact information there, and then I'll write it down also. I'll contact you about that. I have a question about the heat. When you say heat destroy,
right? Yeah, I think, didn't I have it at the beginning?
Gretchen, I think we can put it in the chat for her. I didn't see it on there. So if we stop screen sharing.
Yep. So right on the first slide,
okay,
so
I've seen it now.
Yeah, just Gretchen.Kauth@wmich.
I'm going to screenshot it there, and then I'll have it. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
So yeah, so send me an email and then we can.
He destroyed the probiotics and all that, but coming to the legume side, I see the beans and the lentils and all that we